with a colleague of mine, broke the news to the family that she was not going to come out of her coma and that she would pass away. And I ended up having to switch off the ventilator and pull out her breathing tube, and she passed in front of us. But that's the moment that I realized that how dangerous this is and how cheap life is to the people running these scams. And she's just one in tens of thousands of people that are stuck in these scam compounds.
This is Find Joy with Joanne Season 2, where joy gets stronger, our community gets bigger, and together we become better versions of ourselves in a world full of limitless possibilities. I'm your host, Joanne Chan. And every Wednesday, we bring you inspiring stories that will light up your soul, powerful message that will make you go wow, and fun conversations that will crack you up. With me and my special guests and friends, it is my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. If you are new here, this podcast is for you if you are looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. We dive deep into mindset mastery, spirituality, love and relationship matters, and how to manifest more success and abundance in all aspects of your life, however that looks. This podcast has got your back every step of the way. Now, without further ado, get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Joining us today is a gender-based violence advocate and anti-human trafficking specialist with more than 15 years of experience in child protection across the Asia-Pacific region. She has provided consultation, training, and seminars on anti-trafficking strategies and investigations for the Royal Thai Police, Australian Defence Force personnel, international non-government organizations, industry professionals, and foreign delegations. She was featured in many documentaries, including Traffic to Australia, that was released in 2022, Scam Factory, Behind Asia Cyber Slavery, and also a Chinese criminal network is using modern-day slaves. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming the CEO of Asia of Global Arms Incorporated, the founder of Yes, She Matters, Mechelle Moore.
Hello, it's nice to thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's really nice meeting you as well. And I must say, this is the first time that I'm having an human trafficking specialist on the show. This is the first time we are talking about this topic that is so crucial, yet no one wants to talk about. So thank you so much for this opportunity to have you on the show. So, the first thing that I always like to know is the why behind what we do today, the why behind your purpose, your mission, your company. So can you share with us the motivation behind what you do today?
Gosh, that started from a very, very young age. I grew up in a family who were dedicated to helping other people, and my parents were missionaries and went and traveled to and lived in many countries across the world. So I grew up in a family that was giving back to others and paying it forward. And so from a young age, I've had a desire to want to keep people safe. And when I was 16, I remember sitting down with my youth pastor in Canberra on the lake, and he asked me, what is it that you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to go out and give men, women, and children an opportunity to be safe. And I have a real passion about helping young people, so children, underage women, understanding their right to be safe and knowing how to protect themselves. So that's kind of where it started way back when I was a teenager. How I actually got into Global Arms is I was working for the Australian Defence Force at the time as a civilian, and the board of directors approached me and said, I'm looking to start up a non-government organisation and we'd really like you to come on board, and it's we'd be focusing on anti-human trafficking. And I was like, what's that? I need to know more about that. So I did some research, learnt about the topic, and said I'm in. And I worked with the organization, so with Global Arms remotely for a couple of years, and then decided to move over to Thailand for 1 to 3 years, and then with plans to go back to my career in working with the Australian government. And 10 years later, I'm still here.
I love that. I love your why. Like you just want to make the world a safer place for all, right? And that's beautiful. So, okay, let's talk about human trafficking for a moment, right? So, what is trafficking in persons for forced criminality?
Okay, so trafficking in persons for forced criminality is where someone is trafficked and then forced to commit a crime. So, in the past, we've known this to be for forced scamming. Maybe you have children who have been trafficked and then forced into begging for money, or when women and girls or men and boys are forced into sexual servitude or prostitution. That's forced criminality. But in the last few years, so 3 to 4 years, since just before COVID really, forced scamming has become a real target for crime syndicate groups, and they're trafficking people into these centers and these compounds and forcing them to commit cyber scamming works, to then scam people around the world out of billions of dollars.
Yeah, I was just telling you, right, before we start the show, it's true story, yeah, which something that I have not shared with my listeners yet. Is that, I really love Thailand and Vietnam, and well, of course, you have to let me know like which are the countries that are right now they are targeted for trafficking, human trafficking, right? They are not safe to go. But right now, what I'm aware of is Thailand is a big one, which is where you're at right now, and Vietnam as well, and Cambodia. I'm not sure. But yeah, so like Thailand and Vietnam, I visited these countries in the past, and I love it. I always want to go back, right? Because it's I'm in Singapore. So, but my mom, my dad, they will never let me go. Never, ever, like now, right? So it's really frustrating for me whenever I want to go on a holiday, but I cannot go Thailand because it's really a beautiful place for holidays, and
It
Vietnam,
is.
I love it. So, I'm missing out on so much, so many opportunities, just because of this, right? That's happening in this part of the world right now. So my question is, okay, first, how do we, like, what are some of the countries that are not safe to go at the moment, and what can we do to protect ourselves to make sure that we will not get into troubles?
Okay, so cyber scamming centers have popped up in Dubai, not in Thailand, in Myanmar, but where I'm located is Mesot Tak, which is on the border of Thailand and Myanmar. They are in the Philippines, Cambodia, and Laos. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's not safe to travel to these locations, but you need to be aware of your surroundings. So you need to have your basic situational awareness in check anyway. But then when you're traveling overseas, I would say this when you're going to any country, not just the countries that have forced criminality in them. When you travel overseas to any country, you should be making sure that your personal safety is your number one priority. Yes, it's good to go and have a good time and you want to have fun on your holiday, but you need to be smart about the situations that you put yourself in as well, and the exposure that you give yourself to others. So a lot of times people don't think about what they say verbally. So people might say their telephone number or their address or their credit card number out loud on the phone. People could be listening to that and then recording that information. When people post on Instagram and they post their airplane ticket with their passport photo and yay, I'm going to Vietnam, and it has their passport ID number and all their details on there. They don't think about that sort of thing. So I think your general or your personal safety needs to be something that you think about. But then also too, when you're traveling within, well, it's not just Southeast Asia anymore, it's globally, so it's in the Middle East as well. When you're traveling to these countries and you know that there is this criminal activity, that you are smart about the places that you visit and then also about who you interact with.
Okay, that's really helpful. That is really yeah, because my thinking is that my thought is that when I arrive at the airport, they will just like kidnap me and then bring me to some their centers.
No, it's not really like that. That's not kind of how it works.
That's good news, I must say, right? That is good news. So yeah, so what? Okay, let's talk about your company and what, how are you helping and what kind of role are you doing right now in working with victims and survivors and organizations to prevent this from happening?
Okay, so Global Arms has been working in Thailand for 12 years now. I've been living in Thailand for 10 of those years, and we work in prevention and protection. So, how we work in prevention is we have a training center where we offer vocational training, skills enhancement training, and like we teach hand to hand combat if you want to learn about your personal safety and situational awareness. They're sort of our prevention activities with working with people who are at risk or with say government officials or skilled professionals who want to enhance their training. Then we also work in protection where we have a program called Yes She Matters, which focuses on gender-based violence and child trafficking. And then we have the Global Arms Counter Trafficking Unit, who that task force has been set up mainly to work with forced scamming, potential victims of forced criminality. So people who are trapped in the forced scamming centres and trying to get out, and then helping them report to and work through the government process. So in Thailand, we have something called the National Referral Mechanism, which is the government's new process they're rolling out at the moment to protect and support potential victims of trafficking. So there's a screening process that you need to go through, an interview process, a victim identification interview process, and then if you have indicators that you have been trafficked and there's a case that can be built, then you are put into a government shelter. You're provided government protection, access to a lot of different activities, mental health services, and then the government will actually assist in repatriating you back to your home country. So that's quite a process in itself, but having potential victims actually understand that that process is available and then what that process involves, that's where we come in and we can advocate for them, walk them through actually reporting to the government and sharing their story, giving the interviews. We can provide translation, we can provide mental health support, welfare checks. And so we help them walk through that process to be able to actually understand what their rights are and then provide them with protection.
I think the most important thing is to offer is the support and help after they have been rescued, right? Because I'm sure they are struggling with depression, anxiety, mental health challenges for sure, right? What else do you do or you got corporations do to help these survivors or victims to help them really heal from trauma and restore their life? Because I think that's really important.
It is, yes, definitely. So I might just quickly explain how it happens first. So you were talking about kidnapping before.
Yeah.
That has happened on a few very isolated occasions. It's not really like the movie Taken anymore. It's a bit more sophisticated than that. Have you seen the movie Taken?
Not yet.
With Liam Neeson, and he goes in and his daughter's kidnapped by traffickers at the airport in, I think she's in France. It doesn't happen like that. How the scamming centers are operating is they post fake job ads on social media and then in apps like WeChat, WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, and sometimes on Snapchat. They set up these groups and they advertise fake jobs. When you apply to the job, you can potentially have 2 or 3 Zoom interviews with what you think could be the HR department or your new manager. There's a contract, there's websites set up. It's a very sophisticated scam to actually rope in the victims. So we have a lot of young people nowadays applying for jobs and traveling across the world for work, right? So they've taken those, I suppose, trends and then used it for their own purposes. They set up these fake jobs that you can apply for. Sometimes you can go through a recruitment agency or you can find them online. You are then put in touch with a recruiter, which we call a broker because it's the person who's buying and selling you to the company. They will arrange your travel, they will arrange your accommodation, and they will basically transport you, so the ones going into Myanmar, all the way to Mesot, Thailand, and then they pick you up from the hotel and they traffic you across the border and you're in a scamming compound. You are then told, if you do not want to do this, you will be tortured and beaten. And the people who refuse are then tortured and beaten. Some are imprisoned, Some, the majority are psychologically tortured as well. So they'll pick a few out of the group, electrocute them, put them through beatings, they can whip them. There's lots of horrible things that they do to them. And they say to people, if you don't comply and do what we want, then this will happen to you. So there's a lot of fear as well. So when people come out of these scamming compounds and we either rescue them or we assist on their cases, there's a lot of mental health issues that come up. There's a lot of psychological trauma that's gone on while they're in there. And then when they come out, they're dealing with a lot of shame, embarrassment, hurt, devastation, just it's a lot of emotions. It's a lot of not really understanding how to process what they've been through. And so everybody reacts in different ways. Some people are really grateful. Some people are really rude. Some people are really upset, which is all okay because we all react differently to trauma. But you have to handle them in a really delicate way, and you have to process their cases in a trauma-informed way to make sure that you're actually respecting how they're feeling at the time, and then walking them through the process of reporting and being identified as a victim while still respecting, I suppose, how they feel and what they're going through. Because it's very hard for them sometimes to articulate how they feel and where they're at. Does that make sense? So then once they've gone through that whole process and they're repatriated to their home country, they're not always able to access counseling, access support groups. They don't always go back to good situations. So a lot of these people or individuals who have been trafficked in the first place were applying for jobs because they were in a difficult situation to begin with and they needed work. So they're going back to a situation where they often have a lot of debt that's accumulated because they haven't had the salary that they thought they were applying for. And it's a lot of time wasted on their end. So there's a lot to unpack when you get home. There's a lot to deal with in your family's response and then your feelings around how you think your family will respond. So we try and put them in touch with an organization that's in their home country that can support them, but our network globally, it's getting larger, but it's still quite small right now. So we try and provide them with as much ongoing support from here as we can. And I'm daily in contact with victims who have already repatriated that just need someone to listen to them and who actually understands where they've come from. Because a lot of the time when they try and explain to their family or friends what they've been through, it's very hard to put into words what these scamming compounds are like, but then also what you've physically gone through at the time. So that ongoing support is really important, but then also connecting with them with a community that can be supportive in their home country is really critical as well. So that's the piece we're really working on right now.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I wouldn't know, right, if I didn't ask the question. So, and it must be hard, not just for them. I mean, it's definitely hard for them, but it must be hard for you as well. Working in such an environment, right? Being in contact with victims and trying to help, and so hearing their stories, it must be hard for you. So, what would you say is the most pressing challenges for yourself, in this field, and how do you personally, because I'm sure when it comes, you also need support, you also need help, right? Personally, because it's a lot for you to take on in this job. So how are you, I would say, cope with your own mental health challenges working in such environment?
My main concern is the safety of my team and myself,
Yeah.
and then our families as well. How we cope with our mental health is we debrief constantly, which is really important. So we debrief as a group and then we debrief one-on-one. We have a trained clinical social worker who is a consultant for our team, who we meet with once a month, and we also meet with her individually as well. And then I also meet with a trauma psychologist who's back in Australia once a month to debrief and work through anything that comes up from cases. So we have to make sure that we have access to trained professionals as well, so we can unpack what we not experience, but what we hear and what how we're supporting people, because vicarious trauma is a very real thing and it can shut you down very quickly. But the other thing too is we need to make sure that we have good mental health habits in our lives. So having that time to sit down at home, having that place of peace that you can go to after work, where you can take a moment and sit in silence and you can journal or you can cry or you can listen to music or write or whatever it is that is your individual thing to do to decompress and to actually slow down your mind and to get into that relaxing place so then you can go to sleep and you can go about your week.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your practices. So could you share one life-changing event or moment or a specific memory or a story, right, that you will never forget, that you can share with us today?
Life-changing moment. Okay. I think this is a really sad one, but this is probably the case that's impacted me the most. So we had a victim from Kenya. She was a human trafficking victim for forced criminality. There was a situation where she had to have an operation when she was stuck in a compound in Myanmar, and they botched the surgery. They didn't do it correctly, and she became very sick, and she lost consciousness. At the time, the scamming boss that she was working for and one of her colleagues was trying to extort money out of her family. And so they were not allowing her to seek further medical attention. After a day or so, so about 48 hours, they brought her body across the river and they took her to a hospital in Thailand. And we recognized the background of so it was inside the emergency department because I work with Yes She Matters and I'm at the hospital a lot. We recognized the emergency department she was in. I was able to go to the hospital, and at this stage, they were still not providing us with the location to then help her get more medical care. They had just shown that she was in a hospital, and they were saying to the family, if you don't send us money, then we're not going to give her more medical care. She was unconscious at this stage and put on a respirator. I went to the hospital and I was able to work with the hospital staff to get her put into a separate women's ward where no men are allowed. So that took care of the Chinese scamming boss and he left. So then it was just her colleague who was with her. And at that time, she was still actively trying to get money out of the family. So I posed as a person working with the Kenyan embassy and said that I had money to give her and I just needed to verify her ID. So once I had her passport in my hands, I then reported her to the police as a criminal, and she was processed under the Immigration Act and deported out of Thailand. But then I needed to stay with that client until we thought she was going to get better. I ended up sleeping on the floor next to her hospital bed and assisting her. In Thailand, your family normally comes to care for you when you're in hospital. So they feed you, wash you, change your bed sheets, your diapers, all that sort of stuff. They don't have nurses do that here. So I was doing that for her for 9 days. Eventually, her organs started failing and her body was giving up. So I needed to get power of attorney from her family because they weren't able to fly over here. I, with a colleague of mine, broke the news to the family that she was not going to come out of her coma and that she would pass away. And I ended up having to switch off the ventilator and pull out her breathing tube. And she passed in front of us. And sorry, that's the moment that I realized that how dangerous this is and how cheap life is to the people running these scams. And she's just one in tens of thousands of people that are stuck in these scam compounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't apologize. I mean, this is why, but yeah, we needed to hear that, right? Like people wouldn't know. We take life for granted. Um, people are complaining about their job, their marriage, or anything that is insignificant when we hear story like this, right? So which is why it's important that so glad I asked that question, although it's it's not a happy ending. But so how has that event impacted you, um, I would say even motivated you further to even want to help more people out there? How does that change your life?
How's it changed my life? I think the, the biggest impact that her case has had on myself and our team is that we may see lots of these cases come through, but each one of these clients is an individual. Each one of these clients is a human, and they all have their own lives. They all have their own families. They're someone's son or daughter. Yes, we get tired. Yes, we have very limited funding, but we do what we can and we stretch the funds as far as we can stretch them to be able to help as many people as we can. We have to do that in a responsible way for our own mental health and our own safety, but we have a motto in our organization that's go for the one, which means even if we just have one person, that's worth our time and that's worth our effort. But each of these individual people are worth our time and worth our effort. And I know that the situation is very overwhelming. And in just one of these scamming compounds, it's estimated there's around 10 to 15,000 people trapped in forced criminality.
Wow.
And there's multiple scamming compounds along the border here. When you come here and you see these scamming compounds, because they're just across the river, there's like 50 meters from inside Myanmar, you could see them very clearly from
Really?
Thailand.
Like you can even, like for us, we can even go there and see it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Curious.
the scale of it is overwhelming,
Wow.
but when you break it down into individuals, that you can handle. So you go case by case and you help one person at a time.
Okay, so how do you actually rescue them? I mean, like, what's really the strategy that you are using right now? You guys, your team is using right now to save these people.
Okay, so there's several different ways we get cases. Sometimes we're referred cases by embassies, we're contacted directly by victims, we're referred cases by other NGOs or by the Royal Thai Police. It depends on the circumstance. Sometimes people are dropped in Thailand and then we're contacted and we can go and pick them up. We can give them around 24 to 72 hours to then explain their rights and explain the NRM process, because it is quite a complex process, and then what the next steps will be. And then there's other times where we've had to intercept them being sold between scamming compounds, where the traffickers have crossed from Myanmar into Thailand. We've intercepted them in transit, and then brought them to safety and then helped them report to the government. So generally when scamming compounds are selling them in between scamming compounds in Myanmar, they'll cross into Thailand first and then cross back into Myanmar. So we're able to get them when they cross the border. It doesn't always work and it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
But the key piece is here, however we get a victim, is helping them report to the government and then understand what that process is.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's about having the knowledge, right, and the information, the right information. So how can we? Because I have global listeners, like we have listeners across the world, US, UK, Australia, Europe, Singapore. So how can people who are listening to this right now, how can we help you? How can you help Global Arms Incorporated to in any way, right? Yeah.
So there's several ways you can help. Raising awareness is really critical. So on our website, it's www.globalarms.com. If you go to our website, there's resources you can use. Tell your friends about what you've heard. You can share the documentaries that we've been in to raise awareness and tell them about our organisation and what we're doing. You can obviously donate in different ways. So that's also located on our website under Join Us. You can donate and join us in trying to fight this human trafficking pandemic that we've got going on. And then the other thing too is if you see something, say something. So if you see something that looks suspicious, then reach out and say something. You could contact us, you could contact your local authorities, but don't just sit back and think, oh, that's weird, or that job ad doesn't make sense, or I've seen a group and they traveling overseas and they looked like they were out of place and they didn't know what was happening. Say something to someone, tell someone, don't just keep that information to yourself.
Yeah, I find that really important because I remember at one point of time, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, my sister, she was looking for a job, right? And all of a sudden she texted in our family group chat saying, I found this job, it's really good, but it's in Thailand also. I can't even remember which country, but it was another country. And she said, it's really good paying job, good salary, but I have to go there. And we all read, like just tell them it's a scam, right? It's obvious, right? How can it not be a scam when it's such good money but you have to be in another country, right? It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's really important that we raise awareness. So thank you so much for coming again, to share everything so that we can help. Is there anything else that you want us to know before we end this show?
I think I would probably just put a warning out to people if you are applying for jobs overseas. Try and do your due diligence as much as you can. If you're worried and you've had your job interviews and you think it still looks legit, but it sounds too good to be true, reach out to an NGO or the local authorities or contact the head office in the country that you're going to via another means and just double check your information. You might feel a little bit silly doing it, but it might keep you safe in the long run. And NGOs working in this field, so there's quite a few of us now, we're willing to help people who are trying to verify information. So we'll do the best that we can to try and keep you safe as well. So yeah, you're welcome to reach out to us and just ask the question. But yeah, I just want everyone to stay safe.
Yeah. All right. This has been quite, must say, a heavy conversation, but I'm so glad that we had this conversation. So thank you so much again, Mechelle, for coming and your time. I know you are busy. You must be busy, right? So yeah, thank you so much for taking out your time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. So guys, I'm telling you, go follow Mechelle, visit her website, support her mission, donate, right? I will put all the links in the show note below, so make sure you visit the show note and check out the links and thank her for coming to our show today. Also follow us on Instagram if you haven't already, and like and subscribe to this show so you never miss another episode coming to you every Wednesday. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joanne podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take findjoyjoanne_podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.